I'll read this week's readings from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week, we asked the question, why do devotees fall? And we considered the downfall of Judas in this context. Jesus, in answer to Judas's criticism for allowing Mary to rub his feet with spikenard, a very costly ointment, said, "The poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always." Jesus is saying here that there is one supreme injustice that needs eradication. Poverty, yes, but not of a material kind. Poverty in a spiritual sense. Divine blessings are not common in this world. They are extraordinary. When they come, we should give them priority above every other consideration. Never allow a moment of inner joy, for instance, to be set aside for lesser, quote, duties. Divine attunement is our highest duty. As Lahiri Mahashaya, the guru of Yogananda's guru, said, to listen to the heart's inner sound, Om, which issues from the very center of our being, is man's highest duty. Mary, on this occasion, was not communing with the inner silence in Christ's presence, as she had been when Martha urged that she be reproached by Jesus for not helping out in the kitchen. Mary this time was serving outwardly, but in a very different spirit from the restless fussing for which Jesus had reprimanded her sister Martha. Those who see a radical difference between the paths of action and meditation should understand this distinction. To serve in the right spirit is necessary, for only thereby can we overcome our karmic tendencies toward restless activity. The important thing is that spirit be always inwardly focused, that in everything we do in the act of loving service to the Lord. Therefore the Bhagavad Gita says in the 3rd chapter, the state of freedom from action, that is, eternal rest in the spirit, cannot be achieved without action. No one, by mere renunciation and outward non-involvement, can attain perfection. Whenever the Spirit of God descends upon you, however, remember the words of Jesus, Me ye have not always with you. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Thank you, Joyce. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday service. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Nayaswami Devi, and this is Nayaswami Jyotish. And we want to welcome all of you, and especially welcome our yoga teachers. I hope you all got renewed, and I think it looks like you did. And all our other guests who are with us today. So I'll start by reading a brief passage, a prayer poem from Yogananda's Whispers from Eternity. This one is called, Make Me Feel That Everything is Joy. I am the foam of happiness, spurned out of the sea of thy joy. I am the ocean life, bounding with the billows of joy. Endless eddies of my laughter spread through all hearts. When the time comes to depart, I will retire to wakeful sleep on the bosom of thy infinite joy, a ripple ever dancing with billows of all joy. I am a bubble of joy, struggling to burst and unite with the ocean of joy. I will feel thy joy in all things. Make me a lighthouse of joy also, guiding storm-tossed vessels of life to safety on the shores of thy joy. Let every vine of my activity bear large grape clusters of thy joy, and let me drink the divine wine pressed from the grapes of all life's little joys. So, our topic today, as we just heard, is how devotees rise. And Yoganandaji began his autobiography, he dedicated his autobiography of a yogi to Luther Burbank, an American saint. And I know many of us, when we first see that pause, and Swami Kriyananda talks about when he first picked up autobiography in 1948, he almost put the book down because he thought, how could there be an American saint? But when we study Burbank's life, we come to understand what Master meant, because Burbank had the ability to see the conscious life, the divine life present in all forms, in nature, in plants, in animals, in people. And it was by working with the conscious intelligent life force in everything that he was able to create an extraordinary body of work. Hundreds of varieties of new fruits and vegetables. No one really has come anywhere near what he's been able to accomplish. And really, as an aside, it's because of Burbank that California, the economy of California is what it is, because he started the whole agricultural industry in California. But there's a wonderful biography of Burbank called The Garden of Invention, which I highly recommend. And in it talks about some of the methods that Burbank just intuitively developed. He had no training, no books to follow, just divine intuitive guidance. And he came to realize when he was trying to develop some of the hundreds of varieties of new fruits and flowers and vegetables, that what caused plants to produce a new variety, a new expression, was to stress them a little bit. So if he had a young fruit tree, he would nick the branch a little bit or bend it a little bit or somehow stress it, not to the point where it broke, but just to the point where it had to respond. And at that point, a new growth would start, and very often from that new growth, it would be a new expression, a new fruit, an unknown kind of plum or apple or peach or all the different things that he did to provide the world with abundance and delight and variety. And yesterday, a group of about 20 of us had a most extraordinary experience. We came together all day long from 9 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, and we met with a group of 3 professionals who call themselves the Visioneers. And the reason we did this was there is an idea, a new form that is trying to be born. And it's an umbrella foundation, an educational nonprofit foundation, which will help us get out all of the various aspects of Ananda to a much broader network. So education for life, sharing nature, the joyful arts, solar energy, new forms of agriculture, sustainable living. And we came together with these 3 visioneers who, this is their profession, to help people manifest ideas. And it was an extraordinary day. And you'll be hearing more about it, but I want you to know that it got born. It's beginning. It really will happen. And it is our goal by May 2012 that it will be up and running. But one of the things these visionaries taught us, and this is relating to Luther Burbank, so you know how it's all tied together, was they talked about the creative process. And they expressed it in a very interesting way. They said the creative process is where you start at your present state, whatever it may be. Maybe it's you decide you want to write a book, and you sit there in the front of the blank screen on your computer, and your goal, your future goal, is to have a book. But between the present state and the future goal, there is stress. Anything we want to do, and if you don't want to create something, then don't be willing to take up that challenge. And it's a very interesting way to look at it. And they use the word stress. We could use the word challenge or motivating you to raise your energy. But you can't get from here to there without putting out energy. Luther did it by stressing the plant and making them put out more energy to heal. If we want to do something creative, we have to accept the challenge and put out energy to reach that future goal, which we did all day yesterday, and it's just the beginning of many meetings that will be happening over the subsequent months. And spiritually, it's the same thing. If we want to get from where we are right now spiritually to our goal to become one with God, we have to be willing to take up the challenge, to allow ourselves to be stressed, to put out more energy than we're doing right now. Jyotish was telling me he's reading a very interesting book now about the life of the great Sioux Indian, Lakota Sioux, Crazy Horse. And he said it's a very beautiful book about the end, essentially the coming to the end of that way of life, of that culture. But he said the way they would make their bows is they would get a branch of yew, the yew tree, and they would shape it so that it was wider in the middle and tapered on the ends. And then you could do one of 2 things with it. You could hang it at the top of the teepee to let it harden and dry, a process which took about 5 years. Or you could hold it over a fire and be very, very attentive, make sure it wasn't getting scorched, make sure that it was evenly heated and tempered, and that process takes a day. So here we are in our spiritual life. We can say, I'm going to hang at the top of the teepee, and I'll get there by and by, eventually. Or we can say, I will put out the energy, and it will take attentiveness. It will take focus. It will take being willing to look at what's inside of me and make the changes and not make excuses, not say, well, I really don't need to work on that. If you think you might need to work on it, let me give you a little hint. You do. There's no question. Everybody else knows it. It's just you haven't come to that conclusion yet. So this idea of nothing is accomplished in life without being willing to take on the challenge and being willing to allow yourself to be stressed, being willing to allow yourself a new creative expression of who you are, a new project. I see my dear friend Seva sitting here. She's taken on this wonderful undertaking of doing beautiful gardens and landscaping all around Rajasi Park. And it is hot in the summer. It is dry and dusty. And you see Seva out there with big boxes of plants leaping up the hills like a little girl. And she's willing to take that on. And then we all enjoy the fruits of that and the beauty of that. So the first point in how devotees rise is be willing to do what it takes to make the changes within yourself. The second point, and this was inspired, some friend of ours, Karpani, who's sitting here, told us about a wonderful movie, which again I recommend, called Mao's Last Dancer. And it's a true story of a young Chinese boy from a very remote and poor village in China. And the members of the Communist Party come out and they select children that they think have a potential to be, in this case, a dancer or a gymnast. And so very impoverished family, 8 children living in one room, one little bowl of rice that they would have to share each day, hard working in the fields. And so this little boy goes from that environment to Beijing. He's 11 years old. His name is Li Chu-yang. And they take him to the school. He doesn't see his parents for the next 10 years. And he doesn't want to be there. But he has the potential to be a dancer and a gymnast. So they begin training him. And there's 2 different teachers that he has. One is the ballet teacher, and he's training them for softness and fluidity and freedom and movement. And then the other teacher is the gymnastic teacher, and he's training them for strength and power and control. And the body, it's like they're working, these 2 ways of being trained don't really quite work very well together because the body can't develop in both ways in this way. But and the ballet teacher and the little boy, Lee, he's not very good at either one of them. He's sort of the bottom of the class. But the ballet teacher sees that he has the potential to be a great dancer, and he keeps encouraging him and encouraging him. And finally, he works very, very hard, and there's a performance of a ballet. It's a Western ballet. I think it's Giselle. And at this performance, this is all a true story. Madame Mao, Chairman Mao's wife, and other members, high-ranking in the Communist Party come. And this beautiful dance is performed with this young boy, Lee. He's about 15 at the time, just an exquisite dancer. And the dance is over, and it was a thrilling performance, but they just sit there, no applause. And they pull the ballet teacher into a meeting the next day, and they said, what has this got to do, this kind of art got to do with our revolution, with our country? We want ballet, that dance that reflects the revolution and the struggle of the people and so on and so forth. And the ballet dancer is just weeping because he knows, and we don't quite know why it's Mao's Last Dancer, but because he knows it's the end of that art form in China. I think that's why they call the book that. And so and he tries to explain to them, but the next scene, the ballet dancer takes this boy and he hands him this box, and he says, keep this, but hide it. It's a little wooden box, and he puts it in his coat. And then the next day they look out the window, and the police are taking the ballet dancer away presumably to prison, the teacher. And so he opens up the box, and it's a video, true story. And he puts the video in the video machine, because they study it. And it's a video of the dancer Baryshnikov dancing with such freedom and such power and such beauty. And the young boy is determined they still have the ballet classes, but now they're doing these, with the guns. You've probably seen pictures of the Chinese revolutionary ballet. But he practices to honor his teacher. He practices every night, even though they're supposed to be sleeping, and he puts big weights on his legs, and he runs up and down the stairs to try to build his strength. And he practices at night with his leaps by candlelight because they turn off all the power. And he can't perform the kind of dance he wants to, but he's become a great dancer. And then 3 members, time goes by, it's the early 80s now, and 3 American dancers come to China on a cultural exchange. And they see this boy dancing. He's a young man now, about 20. And they asked the Chinese government if he could come to America for 3 months only to be a student there. And they agree, reluctantly, very reluctantly, but they say 3 months, okay. And this boy comes to America, and he's for the Houston Ballet, just astonishing the crowds with his ability to dance. And then it's time for him to go back 3 months, and he can't do it. And he knows it will put himself and his family under tremendous jeopardy. Perhaps he doesn't know what will happen to his parents, but he defects to America. And his parents are in prison, they're brutalized, finally released. But as I watch this story, and finally his parents actually are able to come to America through the intercession of Barbara Bush. But as I watch this story, the thought began coming to my mind, and you're probably wondering, how is this related to the topic? And it really is. But the thought began coming into my mind because I've been a fan of ballet for a lot of years. Why did so many of the great dancers, Nureyev, Baryshnikov, this man, all defect from communist countries? And at the very end of the movie, there's a quote from this man, and it says, "If you want to fly, you need to be free." And that was the point, and that's the point for all of us. If we want to soar in spirit, we have to be free. And here we live in a country of outward, extraordinary freedom, unlimited freedom, unprecedented, probably in recorded history in this yuga, and certainly in the world. Economic freedom, political freedom, social freedom, everything, artistic freedom. And yet, we haven't found inner freedom. We haven't found, except those who are following this path of inner freedom, we haven't found how to be free of our likes and our dislikes and our attachments and our desires. And so how can we fly if we're not free? And that's why Swami says, every night joyfully throw everything, all of your attachments, all of your desires, all of your limitations, throw it into the bonfire of God, of Spirit. Why? So that we're punishing ourselves, we're judging ourselves, we're limiting ourselves. No, so that we can fly, so that we can be free, so we cannot be weighted down by the consciousness of limitation. He said, and this Li Chao Jin said, I couldn't dance this way in a communist country because the consciousness is filled with bondage. It's really a brilliant analogy for the spiritual life. And wherever we are bound, there we cannot rise in spirit. There we cannot be free. And so we come finally to the story of Mary using this ointment to massage the feet of Jesus. And she's criticized for doing it. And Christ says, "Me you have not always with you." And so finally, if we want to rise in spirit, we need to get rid of our limitations, as we've been speaking of. We need to allow ourselves to be challenged in stress where it's hard. But we also, and most important, need to make that the focus of our life. Whenever we feel the presence of God, we need to stop everything. Nothing is more important. Swami said once when they were building the pillars at Encinitas, they had those big pillars with the gold lotuses on the top, and one of the monks was in charge there. And they were pushing against a deadline. They were trying to get it done. It was going to be open the next day or something. And they were all working around the clock. And then the day before, still when a lot of work was needed, this guy didn't show up for the job. And everyone thought, oh my God, here we are trying to get this done. And they were all complaining to Master, who was with them. And then finally, in the afternoon, the man showed up, and Master said, where were you? As though he didn't know. And the man said, I was meditating, sir. I was very deep in meditation. And Master said, blessed him, and he said, that's good. That is our highest duty. Divine attunement is man's highest duty. Swami also tells the story when he was a young monk, and every day at lunchtime, he would get his tray of food, set it aside, and go and meditate alone for a half hour, and then go back and eat. But one day he was doing this, and as he sat to meditate, he felt God's presence so powerfully, and he was just enjoying it. And then he foolishly, how many of us have done this, looked at his watch, and it was time to go eat. It was 12:30. And he said, I'll be able to pick this up where I left off. Famous last words. And so he went and ate, and he said it never came back, or not never, it was a long time before that state came back to me. So when you feel God's presence, sometimes we have lives that are very, very demanding. And we're dealing with a patient at the clinic, or we're trying to accomplish a project, and we begin feeling God's presence. We can't run away and say to the patient, you take care of yourself. But we can be aware of that presence with us all the time. Highlight it. Don't walk away from it. Don't be indifferent to it. It's God's gift to us. And so when it comes, stop what you're doing, recognize it, focus on it. And if you're feeling uplifted, and the friend calls, oh, you want to go to town, you want to go out to dinner, you want to go to a movie? Not now, not now. Me, you have not always with you. So it's not that we can never relax and do fun things, but if you're feeling uplifted, that needs to be the top priority. And then put yourself in God's way. By that I mean, put yourself in situations where He can come to you. I had my family, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and my father loved to fish. And he would take my brother and me and my mother and my bigger family, my aunts and my cousins, and we'd all go fishing often in the lakes and the streams around St. Louis. And we were little children. We had our little bamboo poles with a little bobber, and we'd throw them in, and we'd put a little worm on there, and or whatever we'd put on there, and all different things. But I had an aunt who would go with us, and she was a very quiet woman. She'd had a hard life, and she didn't talk much, but she liked to go on these fishing outings. And whenever we go, if it'd be a lake or a stream, she'd go off by herself. She didn't have fancy equipment. She had the little bamboo pole too. She'd put her little pole and her little line in the water, and she would sit there. She would sit there all day long in that one spot. The rest of us were, let's try here, and let's try there, and let's try here. Just like we do with meditation. This isn't working. Maybe I'll go here. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll try to do Kriya, sitting in this way or that way. But Aunt Selma just sat there with her pole all day long. And she'd have a little sandwich. She'd eat her sandwich, but she wouldn't get up. And at the end of the day, she would always have the biggest fish. And so we need to put our line in the water and say, God, I'm waiting. Not indifferently, not impatiently, not distractedly, but with focus and attention, because I know you will come. I am waiting for you to come. And then we catch the big fish of divine consciousness. And so all of these things that we've talked about are ways for devotees to rise, and more than rise, for each one of us, if we are sincere, if we do our best, for each one of us to find God.
Lightly I fly when I live in laughter. Lightly I fly when my heart sings. Lightly I fly when I live in laughter. Lightly I fly when my heart sings. Bring to the ground every heavy burden. Now I can soar up above the clouds. Bring to the ground every heavy burden. Now I can soar up above the clouds. Lightly I fly when I live in laughter. Lightly I fly when my heart sings. Lightly I fly when I live in laughter. Lightly I fly when my heart sings. Bring to the ground every heavy burden. Now I can soar up above the clouds. Bring to the ground every heavy burden. Now I can soar up above the clouds. Lightly I fly when I live in laughter. Lightly I fly when my heart sings. Lightly I fly when I live in laughter. Lightly I fly when